everybody. So this is a new what if. Now after this what if, I'll be uploading the what ifs I've been, what was it? I put on my commentary that I've been, working on. So after this what if, I will be, uploading what if Deku was a speedster part 3. I will be uploading what if Deku was what if Deku was a Godzilla part 1, and I will be uploading what if Deku was something else. I think it was what if Deku. Also, guys, what if Deku was a vampire slash had a twin brother that's going to be canceled and replaced with this? What if Deku was, Dracula? But basically, I just got done watching Dracula Untold, and I don't understand why that movie got such bad ratings. Cause like the movie is so good, like it's a really good movie. I don't understand why it got bad views. The story was pretty good. The CGI was pretty good. The action scenes were jam packed. I don't understand why the movie got such bad ratings. Was it because of did the movie lead on to be something different? Cause like I didn't see the trailer to it, but it was a really good movie. So don't know. It's a really good movie though. But yeah. So basically, this will be what if Deku was Dracula. Now I'm gonna be changing Deku's, life a lot, and basically turning Deku into somebody completely different, but still having that nature Deku still has. Basically, Deku was born in the year Deku was born in Transylvania, the year 1889. No, the year nine. No, the year 1984. The year 1984. No, the year. Sorry, guys. The year 1884. So basically, Deku was born at that time, in that year. Deku was born that year, and pretty much born into a wealthy family as a king and a queen. Basically, Deku being raised as a young child, but one day being taken by a enemy threat, basically being a bargaining chip for peace for, their countries. Basically, Deku's father said, I have to give you up. Basically, Deku's father being pretty much giving up Deku because Deku's father thinks that to himself that he can always pick another child. So he gives up Deku, and basically, Deku is put into a war. So Deku was put into a war, or some sort of war training camp for young boys. Basically being taught how to fight from a very, very young age, because at this point Deku was given away at the age of 9. So basically Deku was being taught how to fight and train. Other students or other boys in the training camp all died, or all just went into shock because of the intense training. Because this camp was built to basically foster children to become the best of the best. To become something, well, above average, male or above average men. Making them grow up to be very strong men, able to fight in wars for days or maybe even weeks. Basically, Deku was trained, and he was one of the few that actually did survive the intense training. Basically, being taught in all sorts of, mastery. At one day, Deku was on a pretty much scouting trip after taking down a war pallet. Deku at this point, he was already, released from the training camp and already went back to his kingdom, taking the throne his father left. Taking the throne that his father left after his father wasn't able to have any children because Deku's father was too old. Basically, Deku's father, took up the mantle and became the, rightful throne. The rightful heir to the throne. Basically, ruling the kingdom and becoming Vlad, Deku becoming Vlad the Impaler. Basically, Deku at this point, overthrown a couple of kingdoms and went against some, warriors, eventually becoming across the same legion that took him in as a child and, trained him, the same camp. And that was, a legion, a country, a, kingdom. They made ties and they made, truths. But one day when Deku was about, let's say, 20 years old, Deku was about 20 years old, and Deku's already married to a woman that greatly resembles what was it, Momo Yarozu. Basically, this woman was actually, what you call it, this woman was actually, I think it was something. This woman would come to be, Yaoyorozu's great, like, ancestor. Basically, well, sorry guys. Now that'd be kind of weird. No, no. This woman would be married to Deku, and she would greatly resemble Momoyara Rosu, but this would actually be Momoyara Rosu's soul 1,000 years in the past, meaning that in the present day in My Hero Academia timeline, that Momoyara Rosu that we're gonna meet later on in the What If is going to be, Deku's wife's, distant soul, her reincarnation. So basically, Deku will have two ships in this What If because Deku will actually, come in cases or come in crossfires with another vampire called, another vampire called, I think it was, somebody else, another vampire called, I'm gonna make this name up, I don't know, Jezebel. She'll basically be a vampire tormenting Deku, but she'll be coming into What If a little bit later. So basically, Deku, is, one day he's 20 years old, married to Momoyaya Rosu's distant past lives. You know her. Basically, Deku is there. But one day, the the leader from the distant country or the other, kingdom that Deku has made truce with, he requests 1,000 boys for a war and to put them in the same training camp that Deku was in. Also asking for Deku's child. At this point, Deku did have a kid. This child will die, but we're not gonna get into that, very quickly. Basically, this child basically greatly resembled Deku, looking just like Deku, but just having, black hair. That was basically the only differentiation between Deku and his child. Basically, Deku was, older, but yet again, when Deku was younger, his son gladly, like, looks exactly like Deku when he was younger, but just with black hair and blue eyes. Basically, Deku, over the couple of days of him going back and forth, seeing what would, how he would save his country and pretty much save his child. Basically, Deku, being given a result. Basically, Deku, is thinking about what he could do, but Deku was given a solution. Deku was in his library, in his royal library, reading through some Transylvania books and some mythology or some, war tactics, trying to figure out what to help. But Deku does get off track or sidetracked looking into mythology, going across millions of mythology between witches, warlocks, going through werewolf lore, and eventually stopping at vampires, seeing that it's a cave near the country, or um, near the capital that Deku rules as a kingdom that Deku sees. And this basically cave is inhabited by a vampire that was trapped there thousands of years ago from a demon that had the power of a vampire. This demon tricked the man into going into the cave and sealed him away in there, turning him into a vampire, making him cursed there until he was, cursed or destined to turn somebody else and give them the power of a vampire. Now, basically, the powers of vampire are going to be very similar to the vampire powers in Dracula Untold, but I'm just going to get into those a little bit later. Basically, Deku, sees this and sees maybe this is true, and basically goes to the cave about 2 days before he has to give up the 1,000 boys, or the 2,000 boys, and basically, the 1,000 boys, yeah, it was only the 1,000 boys, and goes into the cave. Deku looks into the cave, and he looks into it. At this point, it was like daytime. It was about 2 hours before sunrise. It was about 2 hours before sunset, so Deku went in there, basically looking around. Now, Deku did have green hair still. It was kind of weird, but Deku was only told, or pretty much, no one really thought green hair was that. It was unordinary in the year 1818. It was 1884. So they just thought, he dyed it, or like he was a chosen one or something. I don't know. Basically, Deku walked into the cave, looking around, and eventually he came across the vampire. The vampire was talking, and eventually, took out Deku's sword, throwing it out of his hands, saying, "Why are you here, human?" Basically, talking about normally humans that come in here are pretty much drowned in fear, but you are drowned in hope, like I'm your salvation. Deku pretty much goes on saying that, "Can you turn me?" Basically, the vampire stops because he was pacing around Deku and basically said, "You want me to turn you? You are a strong human, a very strong human, stronger than other men that have came in here. You seem fit to be turned. I think I can. I think you're strong enough. I do know you're strong enough." Basically breaking a skull that's in the cave, taking the top of the skull that makes it, a bowl shape, whatever the dome of your skull, he uses it as a bowl. As a bowl, and basically basically bites into his hand and drips out his blood, or pours his blood into the bowl, saying, "To drink. You'll be given the power of my blood. You'll be given the power of a vampire." But the only catch, and basically Deku actually asks, "What's the catch?" And basically, the vampire says, "Well, if you drink human blood before the 3 days of your power are up, you will become a vampire for eternity." Basically, Deku saying, "So all I had to do was resist the urge of human blood for 3 days?" And Deku is told from the vampire, "Yes, that's all you need to do. But I gladly know that you won't have that much willpower to overcome the human blood." Basically, Deku grabs the bowl and says, "I want to prove you wrong." And basically gulps down the whole entire bowl, basically coughing and saying, "What now?" And the vampire says, "Now you die." And Deku starts blacking out and he falls onto the ground. Deku wakes up 2 hours later and it's nighttime. Deku wakes up and looks around and the vampire says, "Go, discover your abilities." Basically, Deku runs off, basically looking back at the scroll, and the scroll has a list of powers Deku should get from the vampire, blood. Now, Deku just has to resist human blood for about 3 days. That's all he has to do. After 3 days, Deku's powers will go away, and he'll become a human again. Basically, Deku, looks in the scroll, and basically sees a bunch of list of powers. He sees, what was it? The strength, the power to basically see the senses, basically have senses of other animals and look through their eyes, and basically be able to control bats, transform into a swarm of bats, being able to pretty much shapeshift into bats, control bats, and also Deku can, what was it? Have incredible, like the strength of 1,000 men. Deku has the strength of 1,000 men. Like Deku can straight up chuck a whole entire grown man 10 feet in the air with no ease. Literally, what was it? Of ease. Like literally, he can chuck. Deku, you know what? Deku can chuck the rock with one hand 10 feet in the air with ease. Like Deku's that strong. Deku will be incredibly strong over the years to come if he does become a full-blown vampire. Deku will become stronger over the centuries and eventually become so strong that he'll become basically, well, basically godlike. So basically Deku, you know, goes on developing his powers, seeing that he has the ability to see in the dark, echolocation, have senses unlike any other mortal, being able to hear heartbeats and hear other, basically, that hear heartbeats like Daredevil, basically having the same senses as Daredevil, being able to see in the dark and all that other stuff. Deku also being able to, what was it, climb walls and also jump really high up in the air. Deku being able to heal from gruesome, straight up gruesome, straight up, straight up, what was it, invincible type of injuries. Being able to, survive being ripped in half, if Deku was ever ripped in half. Being able to survive, Deku's heart being ripped out. Basically, the only thing that can kill Deku is silver, stake through the heart, or being completely disintegrated from the sun. So yeah. So basically, garlic doesn't really hurt Deku at all. And so basically that's the only weaknesses Deku has. Deku's only weakness is a cross, holy water, and the sun, and also silver. And that's basically it. Now basically Deku, no, the wooden stake to the heart, and that's it. So basically Deku, you know, trains with his abilities, basically, getting up to his, strength. Deku also having superhuman speed as well, being able to run as fast as, a star. Basically being so fast indeed that Deku can catch up with straight up, racing cars, or easily surpass Ida's speed with ease, and maybe even get close as Quicksilver's, but not as close as, Flash, because Deku could not get as fast as the Flash, but Deku can outpass Quicksilver from the X-Men Apocalypse, thing. Deku can't stop time when he runs, but Deku can run incredibly fast. So basically, Deku, pretty much, Deku when he runs fast, time does slow down for him, but he doesn't stop or slow down time around other people. He just speeds past other people, seeing time slowly. So yeah, so basically Deku goes, using a couple of hours to train with his abilities, basically coming back to his kingdom, embracing his wife, and also, hugging his child, saying that I'm going to win this war. Now, basically, Deku goes to the, people, basically saying that I'm not going to give you the 1,000 boys. And basically, basically Deku not saying that to them, just, making up a plan. And basically them coming to take Deku's child, and later come for the 1,000 boys. They come and they take, Deku's child, but Deku stops them, basically killing all of them in a matter of seconds. Like literally with all his speed and his agility, Deku takes them all down with incredible ease, basically ripping their heads off and throwing them like pretty much miles in the sky and taking them out with ease. Deku takes them all down, killing them, and Deku's, wife and son are, safe. Deku tells the guards, pretty much, or his best friend, aka one of the guards, to take his child and his wife to safety back to the castle. And basically, Deku getting up a plan, and basically them sending the whole entire army to take care of the kingdom. And Deku saying to stay here, and basically for the kingdom to be on guard. And Deku getting ready, pits on. Deku takes and puts on this suit. A suit basically fashioned from one of the days Deku became Vlad the Impaler. Basically wearing a suit that strikes fear in the name of men. Basically the suit being called the Demon Dragon. The Dragon Suit. Being built from the flesh or the skin of very ancient beings. Deku basically being passed down from generation to generation. This suit was, made up from ancient flesh, and this flesh was actually, unbeknownst from Deku, made from the flesh of a vampire. Now this suit gave Deku just a minor advantage of strength, giving Deku 1% more strength than he already has. Deku sprints towards the men, basically sprinting at full speed. Now Deku, with this suit basically, it carries a lot of durability with it, and basically being able to break off swords on impact, and pretty much anybody that tries to stab the suit, basically the suit, pretty much breaks automatically, just snaps on, impact. Basically Deku being bulletproof in the suit as well, but at this time wasn't bullets were around, so Deku didn't know that. And arrows don't pierce the suit either. Pretty much the suit has no openings at all, actually. So yeah, the only opening it has, if Deku looks completely down, it's a little opening of Deku's hair of the back of his head, but Deku would never really look down completely, so it never would happen if Deku was ever hit in the back of the head. So basically Deku runs towards the men, basically taking out the whole entire army in a matter of in 1 hour. Deku takes the whole entire army down. And this army was a group of 1,000 men. Deku takes down 1,000 men, trained with full body armor on, with spears, swords, and pretty much, axes, on deck. He takes down all of them in a span of 2 hours. He takes down 1,000 men by himself in 2 hours. That's a lot of strength. Like, bro. And so basically, Deku takes them all down in 2 hours, and the rest of the, pretty much kingdom sees all of this, and basically, no, the rest of the kingdom doesn't see anything. They show up and they see Deku walk off, taking off his helmet, pretty much saying that we never speak of this day ever again. Don't ask what happened at this field. Basically, walking into the, castle. We skip about a couple of hours later when the rest of the group, or pretty much they get a note. The other kingdom gets a note from the rest of the, the army that, Deku took down, saying that Vlad the Impaler or Deku, because in this what if actually Deku's real name is actually Deku. So basically, Vlad the Impaler is actually Deku the Impaler. So basically, Deku's real name at this time is actually Deku, and Deku's name is gonna go down in history books. So basically, Deku basically goes there and walks into the castle, basically having a nice day, but also taking his children and the kingdom to a isolated other alternative kingdom in the mountains. Basically, there Deku reveals that he's a vampire, or he's becoming a vampire, to his wife, and his wife is on his side because obviously she loves him. So basically, Momo's past life self, or just I'm just gonna say Momo, and basically takes her child and says, she's already left to fight the war against, King Archive, or whatever his name is. King Archive was the man. King Archive's gonna be the guy that's gonna be the king of the army. So basically, they say send 2,000 men there and see how let's see how Deku the Impaler can go up against them. So basically, Deku gets back into his armor and gets ready. So basically, at this point, Deku gets back in his armor and gets ready and sees that the kingdom gets there, or the place gets there. They go up against the country. They go up against the things. And basically, Deku, at this span, it's already been about 2 days. So after the sunrise of this war, Deku's powers fully go away. Except if Deku does drink human blood, he does become a vampire. But yeah, it's obviously gonna happen. So basically, Deku, goes to what you call it? Deku goes to Deku goes to the kingdom and pretty much fights the what was it? The army of 2,000 men, pretty much taking a swarm of bats. At this point, the men were actually blindfolded because they were told by the king not to be scared of this man because he uses fear tactics. So basically, they come there with blindfolds on, basically marching down, basically sending two pretty much agents down there to grab the child and the mother, basically killing the mother and grabbing the child and getting out of the kingdom as fast as possible. Deku pretty much attains a swarm of bats and basically uses them to take down a whole entire ton, like a whole entire handful of the men, basically killing multiple of them, making the bats eat them. Deku eventually gets down there, grabbing the man that seems to look like the king, but actually when he takes the helmet off, it's not the king. And he looks up and he sees, or he hears, that his wife and his son are, yelling. Deku throws the man on the ground and flies up into the sky. Deku gets down there, basically his power is fading away because the sun's coming up, and basically Deku runs over to his wife, basically helping her, trying to help her off the edge because she's about to fall off of the castle, but she falls and Deku jumps down, using a little bit of his power to make a swarm of bats where his legs were, boosting him down to the ground, trying to, grab her, but they fall to the ground, and basically Deku sees that his wife could still survive this, so basically saying that we need to help you, and basically she stops Deku and talks about how he has more time, and he has to drink her blood. And Deku says no, and basically she goes on about how our son's life isn't safe, but mine's yours, and I need you to become strong enough to save our son. Basically, Deku, our son, sorry guys, basically Deku saying, I can't, and basically she grabbing Deku's mouth saying that you can. And basically, Deku going towards her, Nick drinking her blood and her dying in his arms, and basically him yelling in the sky saying that I'm going to kill you, King Furkan. Basically, Deku, gives his wife a proper burial and pretty much comes back to the kingdom, seeing that it's all tormented and, slaughtered up and, killed. Seeing a couple of survivors, seeing about 4 or 5 people there. And Deku looks around, pretty much turning a couple of them. Deku turns a couple of them, making a pact for himself, making a miniature army of vampires for himself, going back to the kingdom of pretty much, what was it? Going back to the other kingdom, killing all of them, going to the king's room, seeing that he has the whole entire room laced with silver and has a whole entire silver armor and sword, straight up decked out with silver, ready to kill Deku. Deku runs towards the man, and the man, says, "Are you sure you can fight me? How long can you bear being in a full silver room?" Deku, Deku's senses are going out of whack, and Deku's feeling a lot weak. Deku is, go down to the strength of a normal man, but Deku is still, trained. He still has the strength of, a full, completely, physically fit man. So basically, Deku fights for a couple minutes, going back to back, and the man saying that I thought we were brothers. At the training camp, we fought side to side, but I now know that you're just weak, slower, and you're frail. You're weak and you let your kingdom fall down because of your petty children. You can always make another one. Is that what your father said to you? And Deku gets super angry at this and grabs the man's Nick, basically saying that I'm not going to let you talk about my father anymore, or take my child, and throws him through a wall, throwing him outside. When Deku walks towards him, Deku pretty much jumps on top of the man, breaking his spine, and grabbing the man's skull, saying goodbye, and pretty much crushes his skull. Him dying there, and Deku looking back to his son, embracing him, saying that it's all over now. He walks out and basically sees the swarm of vampires that he made, saying that they're all gone. Basically saying that your son is the only one left, but we need to get rid of him. And Deku says, "What are you talking about?" He says, "We're all vampires. Your son is human. He's a liability, and also we're hungry." They're slowly pretty much backing up to Deku, or walking towards Deku and his son, and basically Deku is still in his armor, but just with his helmet gone. Deku looks around and says, "Back off." And Deku basically grabbing his son, saying, you have to stand back." The man that was basically saying that earlier, the vampire, and basically walking towards the man, saying that you have to give him up now, and you can't fight all of us. Deku says, you forget who I am." Basically, Deku grabbing a shard of wood, or like a wooden stick on the floor, impaling the man or the vampire, pretty much sticking him up into the sun, and at this point, Deku used a swarm, or used some of his shapeshifting powers to make a swarm of mist around the sun, basically keeping all the vampires, unharmed by the sun. Basically, Deku seeing that, the man burns up and dies because he was, hit in the heart by a wooden spear. Basically him, disintegrating and dying, just with his, fleshy corpse there on the stick. Basically, they all back up just a little bit, and slowly back up. As they slow back up, and they slowly back inwards towards Deku and his son. And Deku says, "You want to fight? I'll give you a fight." Basically, him taking out his fangs and his eyes going bright red. But Deku gets stopped by a churchman that basically says, "I can, save your child." Basically, him having a giant cross coated in silver, made out of silver. Basically, Deku looks at the man and looks around the vampires and says, "The only way you can be safe is with him." Basically, giving him to the churchman, and pretty much his son saying, "Don't leave me," basically crying, saying, "Don't leave me, Papa," and basically Deku looking towards his son, saying that I'll be there and I always love you. After that, Deku opens up the clouds that he's made with his powers and burns the rest of the vampires, killing all of them except the one, aka soon to be except the one vampire that would soon to be Deku. Basically, after that whole entire event, Deku is slowly dying from the sun, burning away. The churchman takes his son and takes his son back to the kingdom, and Deku falling down to the ground. But Deku's body still being able to be savaged by a man that basically, at the beginning, actually I didn't mention this. At the beginning, this man actually knew about Deku being a vampire, and basically offered him human blood. But Deku refused, and pushed him away. But this man came back for Deku, dragging him back into a room without any sun, basically taking drops of his blood, pouring it on top of on top of Deku's mouth, basically making Deku drink. Deku wakes up about 2 months later with his body fully recovered, and Deku, looks around and sees his son, and basically, sees that he's safe. He's safe, Momo. And basically, saying that to the sky, saying that he's safe, Momo. Basically, him walking off, not going back to his son, searching the rest of the world, looking at rest of the world, we skipping after basically Deku looking to the rest of the world, searching the rest of the world, and traveling the states, the countries, the cities, and all the other stuff. We skip about 1,000 years, centuries later, at the year 2019, or the year whatever, the year I don't know, whatever. What was it? The present date in My Hero Academia timeline, the beginning of when Deku was, going to UA. Deku at this point, Deku has already, settled in with humanity. Now Deku actually, surprisingly, Deku actually is very buff and tall, but Deku still looks, Deku does, look, 19 or 17, so Deku is still able to, enter in UA, lying about his age, because at this point Deku's like thousands of years old, or millions of years old. Deku's about thousands of years old, so Deku goes to the modern times and looks around. Basically, Deku at this point has already made himself in society, becoming a very rich man, actually. Becoming a very rich man, and also taking up multiple different, pretty much, identities, pretty much saying, making names for himself, taking up new names, but also taking up old names, and also the same name. Basically, Deku becoming, Deku the second, basically Deku the third. Basically, Deku taking on the same name 2 years after he was supposed to die from natural age, because Deku's immortal. Basically, Deku taking up new, pretty much, new, I think it was new identities every year that Deku was supposed to die, but doesn't. So Deku, takes up new mantles every year, taking up new names and new jobs and new everything, but also making a company for himself, a company that sells ancient artifacts for millions of dollars. And Deku's been alive for thousands of years, and Deku has, picked up millions and maybe even thousands of, millions and thousands upon thousands of, ancient artifacts from the years Deku's been alive. Deku has picked up actual artifacts that are actually real, picking up the actual Excalibur, Deku actually having the actual Excalibur in his penthouse. And basically, Deku's mansion, Deku owns about 6 museums, and all these museums hold ancient artifacts that are actually real. Like the real Excalibur, the real items, the real items that have real magical powers. The items that are real, that are just, items like a cannonball or like a king's throne. Basically, those are at museums. The artifacts that don't really hurt people. But the ancient artifacts that are actually magical are at Deku's house, there to basically not be sold. Deku having the actual Excalibur, having multiple different witches and warlocks' cauldrons and their wands and everything, and Deku also having the Wolfman's pretty much what was it, staff and everything, and Deku's been alive for thousands of years, and Deku has came across other mythical creatures like witches and also vampires as well. No, coming across other other what was it, werewolves actually, coming across werewolves. Now, basically, guys, I don't know who I should turn into a werewolf in class 1A, but I am gonna be turning I'm gonna be turning one person into a werewolf in class 1A. So you guys should choose who should that be. I'm thinking about should I pick Kirishima to be a werewolf or Bakugo to be a werewolf. But yeah, so basically Deku, you know, has a huge mansion that holds most of the artifacts that are magical, that have real magic in them. Basically, having artifacts like his armor, and Deku also having about a couple of different armors over the centuries Deku's been alive. Deku has armors built from all sorts of metals from different timelines and different countries and pretty much different centuries. Deku taking care of them every day, basically keeping them in great shape for them being you know so old. Now, basically, Deku's original armor that you saw, a couple thousand years ago that Deku wore during the war, that armor is kind of brutal down and beaten up, but it's still good enough for Deku to actually wear into an armor. But this armor is actually still durable and still looks good to this day because it's made out of vampire flesh, and vampire flesh is immortal. Basically, Deku's armor being incredibly, durable, not being able to age as easily as other armors Deku's picked up over the centuries. Now, Deku's picked up an armor about 200 years ago from Japan. Basically, this armor being a dragon armor built to mainly use a lot of more agility. Now, Deku's original suit already has a bunch of agility, but it's a little bit too brutal because it looks so demon-esque, and it has so much fear and built into the suit. Basically, anybody that sees the suit feels, basically fear and so much, tarnish in it. But Deku basically, going through life being a very rich and powerful man. Now, basically, at this point, Deku's about, in his birth certificate or whatever, Deku's about, what was it? Deku's about, let's say, Deku's written himself up to be 17 years old, because that's the lowest Deku's age can go. Because Deku looks pretty young for being 20 years old. So basically, Deku, still has his green hair and everything, basically being called Deku the Third. Deku taking up that mantle of the name every five, every 10 years, Deku takes up that name. So it's been thousands of years, and Deku's took up that name for about 3 times, and this is the third time. So Deku, the rest of the time, Deku's name is just, random names like, Carcantos, or, Johnny, or Clark, or like, Logan, because Deku did take that name up about 200 years ago. So basically, yeah, so Deku took up a bunch of names from different cultures and different, pretty much, uh, different cultures, different timelines, different countries, and all the other stuff. So Deku, eventually hears about EUA, and actually, this year, Deku actually decides maybe it's time for me to do some good in the world. Deku's already, a billionaire, and Deku's already set for life and for generations to come. Now, basically, Deku, no one knows in Japan that Deku's a vampire, but since quirks are such normal now, Deku will actually pick down his quirk as vampire. In this quirk, Deku actually wrote down that he lives for a very long time, meaning that Deku didn't have to change his identity so quickly. So basically, Deku, can live for thousands of years without changing his identity, saying that he lives for a long time since of his quirk. So basically, Deku writes down his quirk as vampire, and that was basically it. So Deku just wrote down his quirk as vampire for his, his government or his his license or whatever. And I'm pretty sure license in My Hero Academia, normal licenses in My Hero Academia have your quirk registered, I think. But if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. So basically, Deku, basically or signs up for UA one day, and this day, and this timeline, in canon timeline, this is the same day Deku signs up to go to UA in canon. So Deku signs up to go to UA and goes to UA. Now basically, at this point, Deku got a recommendation, basically getting into UA pretty quickly, because he didn't want to do the whole entire, entrance exams. So basically, Deku gets to UA pretty quickly, and gets into class 1A automatically, and sits around, looks around, and basically sits in there, seeing a very familiar face that brings back very, very beautiful memories and very harsh memories, seeing Momoyaya Rozu. Deku is confused and looks closer and sees Momoyaya Rozu yet again. Now, actually, guys, this vampire that I said earlier that survived Deku's, whole entire attack, this vampire will be called a new student in UA called, let's say, this vampire would be called, what was it? I think this vampire was called, this will be Caitlyn. No, Caitlyn. Yeah, Caitlyn. This will be Caitlyn, the vampire. And basically, she would be a modern day vampire, basically watching over Deku the thousands of years, running into Deku a couple of times, basically, falling in love with Deku, and eventually going to confess her feelings, and eventually try to, get with Deku. But for now, Deku's gonna go back and forth, or be tugged back and forth by the love that he has for Momo, because Momo resembles his wife, and also has the same personality of his wife as well. We're pretty much looking and actually acting exactly like his wife, but also being a little bit different. But yeah, this will be Caitlyn. Yeah, this will be Caitlyn, the vampire that Deku, might go back and forth with and date a couple times. Basically, her and her eyes seeing, pretty much her being a yandere kind of, and her seeing in her eyes that, she's a vampire, and in this universe, vampires can sexually reproduce, seeing that she's the best, option for Deku, because she'll never get old, she'll never get sick, and she can live forever with Deku for happiness, for happy. Basically, death will never do them part, because they'll live forever. But Deku, doesn't know about Caitlyn's existence. Basically, and the Caitlyn was actually one of the few vampires that was one of the few of the vampires that didn't want to kill, Dracula's son, and that wanted to help him. But, she was way in the back, so she didn't really talk. But yeah, so basically, Deku, we switch back to Deku, and basically Deku's in class when this guy, I'm pretty much drooling at Momo. No one's seeing this, but Deku stops drooling before anybody can see. But Caitlyn saw this, pretty much getting a little bit angry at this. But seeing the similarities between Deku's, original wife and seeing Momo, seeing that she looks exactly like her, and Momo being the reincarnation of Deku's, wife, or Deku's, wife that he had 1,000 years ago. Basically, Deku kind of already got over his wife's death. He didn't really get over it fully, but, he still, loved his wife deep down inside. But he always said he could move on, but Deku never, fell in love with anybody else. But, yeah, so basically, Deku, does see Momo and, sees that maybe he could have a relationship with her, maybe date her. So basically, Deku, goes to, what was it? Goes to the quirk assessments after the whole entire, Azawa walking in class saying that it took you 10 minutes to get quiet, and pretty much, going off. And basically, they tell them to get ready, and they go outside. Deku was told to throw the ball first, and Deku throws the ball with ease, throwing it
pretty much really far, throwing it almost into the atmosphere. Deku getting a pretty good score, getting better than Todoroki and Bakugo. Now, basically, for the long jump test, Deku dominates. For the race, Deku passes everybody, including Ida. For the grip test strength, Deku dominates everybody. And after that, Deku, is told from, everybody else, told like everybody else to go back home and get handed their, syllabus. Now, Deku's name is actually known in Japan as, a owner of, 10 different museums in Japan. And pretty much, what was it? Okay. Deku has 4 museums in Japan that he owns. Deku has 3 museums that he owns in New York and America. No, Deku owns three museums in America and owns owns 3 more in I think it was not Japan, in Italy, and also owns 1 museum in Transylvania. So yeah, so basically Deku Deku also owns a couple of airlines. No, Deku doesn't own an airline. Deku owns about 2 private jets, about 5 cars, and 15 like $1,000 cars. And Deku also owns like about 3 houses in Japan, 3 houses each in Japan, New York, America, Canada, and Transylvania. So yeah, all those mansions are also cared for by a staff of 10 butlers. So yeah, and Deku doesn't hold anything very valuable in either of those. Only 1 valuable magical item in each one. And that's basically it. Most of his valuable, magical items are in his, Japanese or his Japan mansions, because those are the mansions Deku goes to the most. Because Deku got a very good liking to Japan. So basically, Deku dominates all of the things and gets told to go back home. Deku goes back home, but before Momo can go home, Deku, talks to her, kind of flirting with her, and basically her telling, Deku her name, saying, Momo. Deku's stunned by this because Deku's wife was actually named Momo as well. Basically, Deku talks to Momo, pretty much, just talking to her, walking her home, and basically, giving her Deku's number. Her giving her number to Deku. Deku takes her number and says, "Well, I'll see you tomorrow." And pretty much, she blushes and walks off. Pretty much getting to her limousine, getting drove back home. Basically, Deku, calling his limousine, being stopped by Caitlyn, pretty much being, flown off into a roof by, a swarm of bats, and basically Deku stopping and saying, who are you? And basically, her appearing herself saying that I'm Caitlyn, the woman that loves you. Deku stuns at this and says, what? Basically, she says, I'm Caitlyn, the one you turned. And Deku goes back to the memories that he had 1,000 years ago and says, I know you. You're the woman near her deathbed that I hoped that I brought back. But how did you survive? I thought I killed all of you. She says, yes, but I was one of the few that actually wanted to help your child survive, or help your child get out of the clutches of those vampires. But I was in the back, and I was able to flee and get into a tent that was covered and could block out the UV rays or the sun. But basically, Deku says, so you love me? Basically, she says, yes, I watched you from a distance thousands of years, but I didn't have enough courage to ask you, but I do now. Basically, Deku saying, what? She pretty much throws, pretty much walks towards Deku slowly and effectively, and puts her arm over Deku's, shoulder and says, here's my number, call me when you want to. And basically, she flies off in a swarm of bats. Deku grabs her number, pretty much seeing 2 numbers. Now, basically being Deku got Momo's number on a pink piece of paper, and Deku got his number from the vampire girl, Caitlyn, on a white piece of paper. So basically, Deku looks at Caitlyn's number and says, another vampire. Basically, being kind of confused because he he did, want to move on from his wife, but he also already has, he already, does kind of, is almost kind of getting close to being boyfriend and girlfriend with Momo, so Deku doesn't know what to do. So I'm going to leave it off there, guys. So after that whole entire event, Deku goes back home, and I'm going to leave it off here, guys. So, I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and it's been about 50 minutes. Wow. And basically, Deku, goes, oh, sorry, guys. So basically, I'm gonna leave it up here, guys. So, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys like, subscribe, and, well, comment down below what you want to see next. Because, as always, guys, you can comment down below any requests you guys ever want to see. And I'll see you guys later. Bye. As always, guys, have a blessed day.